The main thing I'm looking at in this first pass is cutting between camera angles. Looking at the timeline, this black part here, this is where my intro is going to go. I'm not going to do that right now. So the first thing I'm going to pay attention to is everything that comes before the intro. I want to get this tightened up to feel like it's good to go into the video intro. So let's see what we got. Motion tracking is a really fun and powerful and just awesome effect to use in your videos, and fortunately in recent years it's become easier and easier to use. So today I'd like to introduce you to how I use motion tracking in my video intros. Okay, we have this jump cut here, which we talked about last time. So today the audio kind of jumps, the light in the background jumps, it's very distracting, so let's first fix that. Let's start by making the audio transition a little bit smoother. What I normally do, you can take this little ball icon, this little round thing, and drag it over, and that's gonna create an audio fade, but we don't want a long fade because that's gonna sound like this. So today I'd like to introduce, it's distracting and unnecessary. We want a really short fade. So today, basically, if I disable this and I cut this audio off in the middle of a sentence, you're gonna notice a little bit of a pop once it ends. Ear to you. I don't know if you could hear that. It's like, you can kind of hear like it's like, almost like a snap. Ear to you. We don't want that kind of thing. Obviously, in that case, I was cutting in the middle of a word, but even with a little bit of audio like this here, that could still happen. So I'm gonna fade out that clip, click on the end of the clip, and just comma over like one frame. Easier and easier to use. So now that clip is good, and the clip that it's going into. So today I'd like to, there's no unnecessary pops or weird breaths or anything. So now these two clips next to each other sound really good. If you just listen, it sounds basically like one uninterrupted sentence. Easier and easier to use. So today I'd like to introduce you to how. Cool, so now our audio is set there. What we need to do now is figure out how we want to handle this jump cut. A lot of times if I'm doing a product review video, this is easy because I can just put in clips of the product. And then when people see the video, the first thing they see is the thing that they're interested in and why they're watching the video. But this is a little different because we're talking about a software tutorial. So now I need to decide if I can cut away to something or if I want to keep myself on screen the whole time. Years, it's become easier and easier to use. So today I'd like to introduce you to how I use motion tracking in my video intros. I'm gonna see how the second angle looks now. So I'm just pressing B, clicking on the second angle, pressing A to go back to my pointer, clicking on that, and pressing V. That's the, I cut it and activated it. To use in your videos, and fortunately in recent years, it's become easier and easier to use. Okay, my head's cut off here in the shot, so I'm gonna move this down a little bit. Just sort of frame up this specific shot here. Just awesome effect to use in your videos, and fortunately in recent years it's become easier and easier to use. So today I'd like to introduce you. So now we've covered up that jump cut. Especially there's good continuity because my hands are over here to my left in this shot, and when we cut to the main shot they're still over there. Even though those are two totally different times, I try to be aware if I know while I'm filming that I'm going to be cutting from one angle to another. I try to not move while I think of what I need to say next, but this is just a happy accident. So this is also where it might become obvious why I'm not using the Multicam tool in Final Cut Pro, because I'm using my multicams to cover up edits and things, which I find it easier to have more control over it this way. But Multicam is really awesome, like we talked about in a previous section. So I will put a link in the notes to this section to a tutorial I made all about how to use Multicam within Final Cut, because it is an absolutely amazing tool. And if you're somebody who does a longer form stuff or a video podcast, or just, it might work better for you, definitely worth knowing that it exists, and then you can decide whether or not you want to use it. Now the other option I have here is to put in a clip of something. Since I'm talking about these video intros, I could add in one of those intros. So this is what I'm talking about. Also, if you're unclear of what I'm even talking about in this video, this kind of thing here, a video intro where the name and the logo, like the animated logo is sort of stuck to something, that's what I'm teaching people how to do in this video. And so I have all these clips from just random videos where I thought it looked cool, and maybe that would be a good thing to include here. I'm gonna grab this one because I really liked it. And so I added that clip, that B-roll clip, the same way I've added everything so far is I just dragged it from here, from my folder of clips to the timeline directly, and we don't need the audio from this. So let's see here. We are going to arrow over to just this specific shot. Use in your videos, and Okay. And just awesome effect to use in your videos. And fortunately, in recent years, it's become easier and easier. It's become easier and easier to use. So today, I'd like to just awesome effect to use in your videos. And fortunately, in recent years, it's become easier and easier to use. So today, I'd like to introduce you to how I use motion tracking in my video intros. The thought I'm having here is that I like being able to show an example of motion tracking, but I don't know if this is going to be confusing or not. I'm honestly not sure what works best, using this clip or using this clip. It's become easier and easier to use. So today I'd like to intro. So to help figure out what's gonna work best here, what I'm gonna do is sort of start playing around with other parts of this intro, starting with the audio. I'm gonna right click on the main clip and detach the audio, just so I can drag it down here and fade it in, because there is, if we listen right here, there's sort of a little blank space. There's some white noise and even a breath. We don't need that, so I'm gonna drag that over and fade it in. Motion tracking is cool, but I still want this part of the video. I don't wanna cut out this video. Now I do like to have my videos fade in from black, and the reason for that is because sometimes when you start a video or YouTube puts up a video to start or whatever, it sort of freezes on that very first frame until somebody presses play. And if that first frame is you with a weird look on your face, I just imagine like it being, I don't know, put up on a projector in like a classroom or a room somewhere, and I'm just on the screen with like the dumbest look on my face. Well, I don't know. So I like to start my videos with just solid black. And there are a couple ways to do that. You could go over to your transitions, and then we could do dissolves, and we have a fade to color, and we could just drag that on top here. Motion tracking is a really, but again, control freak. And sometimes, depending on the transition, you might find that a transition also affects the audio. In this case, it's not, because I've already detached the audio. What I do is I just use keyframes. What a keyframe is it's a frame that basically tells Final Cut that this element needs to be doing this thing at this time. You can keyframe in anything, movement, scale. Anytime you go to your inspector or to an effect and you see this little diamond with a plus icon, this is the keyframe symbol, and that means add a keyframe. And you can do that for any setting that that icon pops up next to. So you can keyframe scale, position, the crop, opacity, everything. I kind of like my fades to be a little bit slower, and I know right here I want it to be just by feel, not by any sort of scientific reason. I want it to be fully faded in. So I'm going to click on this clip, go over to opacity, and add in a keyframe. And now this is orange, that's telling me there's a keyframe there, and that's opacity at 100%. Now, anytime I move the playhead and change opacity, Final Cut's going to automatically add in a new keyframe, because there's one keyframe, so any other movement is then going to get attached to that keyframe there. But I don't want it at 47%. Instead, what I'm going to do is put this all the way at the beginning and then drag our keyframe down to 0. And now it will fade in. Motion tracking is a really fun and I can also press Control V on this clip, or I could right click on it and select Show Video Animation, and now I can actually see my keyframes. In this case, right here where it says Compositing Opacity, this is a keyframe, and then my other keyframe is there. And you can actually move your keyframes around and adjust them. If I put them really close, it'll fade in really fast. If I put them really far apart, it'll fade in much slower. Motion tracking is a really fun, but I liked it back where it was. If I don't want it, I could also just totally delete that keyframe. And if I added in anything else, it will just keep adding in these lines for whatever effect has a keyframe to it. We'll be using keyframes a little bit more, so if that doesn't make total sense, it will start to make sense. Keyframes are an amazing tool to sort of take control over elements of your project. And you can do keyframes for audio and video. So another area that I'm going to use keyframes in here is in this introduction. If I'm not starting a video with a shot of a product, because I think products are interesting, right? It's a thing, it has buttons and features, and you could light it in a way that looks cool. That's interesting. This is just me. I'm significantly less interesting than a product is. So to make this a little more interesting, I'm going to add in some camera movement here. What I'm going to add in this case is a slow pull. What I want to do is, if I delete this clip, because I know I don't need this second camera angle here, I'm going to go under this clip here and basically just tell Final Cut Pro by clicking here and adding a scale keyframe that I want this shot, I'm gonna add a position one too. I want this shot to look like this at this point on the timeline. That's what these keyframes are saying. And then what I'm going to do is go to the beginning. I should have done the opacity first. So I'm just gonna go to this random point here. When the video starts, I want it to be zoomed in just a little bit more, not a lot, and framed more properly. And now I'm gonna drag these two keyframes all the way to the beginning. So what we should see now is the video is going to kind of zoom out a little bit. Motion tracking is a really fun and powerful and just awesome effect to use in your videos, and I don't like to see the zoom start or stop usually on screen, so that's why I added these ending keyframes under this clip here. It also means if I wanted to adjust the speed, I could just drag this out. Powerful and then it will be a slower effect, but we'll put it back where they were. So now we have some kind of cool motion here for our intro. Our audio fades in, and then we have the second clip here, and we go to the normal shot over here. Let's see how that looks. Motion tracking is a really fun and powerful and just awesome effect to use in your videos, and fortunately in recent years it's become easier and easier to use. So today I'd like to introduce you to how I use motion tracking in my video intros. I can delete this because we aren't going to need it, and I decided I don't want to use that clip. And we don't need that screen recording. So now I'm going through, and the stuff I know I don't need, I've cut out. So this is just basically what the intro looks like. There is this silence here, but it's the awkward silence after the silly joke. In my video intros. So I want it to cut away when I give the little like nod, the cheesy nod to the camera. That's when I want it to cut away. Then we'll have our intros. And I can probably fade this out just a little bit. In my video intros. If you don't want to detach your audio, you can just double click on the audio sound waves, and then it will kind of look the same, and I can adjust this as if it were detached and fade in, but it's not actually detached from the clip. So I can double click again and it will go back. Intros. One other thing that I have in the back of my mind is I know I'm going to have music at the beginning of this video. I don't know if I'm gonna have music throughout the entire video yet. I'm thinking I probably will, but I know the beginning is going to have music, and I know it's going to have music through the intro logo, and then if anything, it'll fade out here or change to a different song here. So I also know some of this audio is going to be covered up by music. I kind of went into a lot of detail there, but that's the basic process and the basic thought process that we'll be using for the rest of this video on the rest of the timeline.